Здравейте! Както знаете, в Софийския университет, наред с обичайните общофакултетски семинари на наши учени, имаме и гостуващи лектори. Днес имам удоволствието да ви представя лекцията на Атанасиос Пакопулос от университета в Патра, Гърция. Неговите интереси са в областта на модифицираните теории на гравитацията, особено по отношение на черните дупки. Неговият доклад беше свързан с неговите проучвания в областта на черните дупки с първична коса. Приятно гледане!
My recent work about black holes with primal hair. This is part of a large project we started 6 years ago. We had this idea with Christos Karmousis to take the full Hortensky system with keeping general the form of the coupling functions G2, G3, etc. Add the non-Hortensky terms and try to write down the system of the field equations and examine the integrability conditions. Okay. And of course, 2 years ago, we have found these solutions with primal hair. Today we'll start with introduction. We move to Hortensky and beyond Hortensky theories, where I will present the methods we developed in order to construct the primary hair solutions, okay, not the general system. And if I have time, I will discuss the thermodynamics. As we all know,
the interest is increasing.
Yeah. General theory of relativity counts many experimental successes, with the most recent ones being the detection of the gravitational waves and the black hole shadows. However, cosmological observations, along with theoretical reasons like the non-normalizability of gravity, etc., indicate that general relativity is an effective theory and therefore is expected to break down at some distance or energy scale. So these observations motivate the need for modified gravities, and the simplest and most studied of these modified gravities are the scalar tensor theories, where the gravitational field is extended by the addition of a scalar field. And of course, although these theories are usually constructed, are motivated as cosmological models, the existence of local solutions, black holes, wormholes, neutron stars, are essential for their credibility. So the most general scalar tensor theory, as I told you, is the Hortensky theory. This is the most general scalar tensor theory with one scalar field and second-order equations of motion. So every scalar tensor theory is encoded in this theory, the Hortensky theory. The Hortensky theory has parameterized by the first 4 terms in the Lagrangian. However, we can extend Hortensky by considering higher order terms in the Lagrangian. For example, here we consider the beyond Hortensky, also the beyond Hortensky theory. Beyond Hortensky is parameterized by these 2 terms in the Lagrangian. However, in order to have second order equations of motion, we have to impose degeneracy conditions. Okay, and this is the degeneracy condition for the beyond Hortensky theories. In general, the complexity of these theories seldomly allows for exact analytic solutions to be derived. So in order to construct solutions here, we constrain the theory to be shift symmetric. Our Lagrangian to be invariant under this transformation. This means that the coupling functions depend only on the kinetic term. Sorry for that. In this case, the equation of motion for the scalar field takes the form of a conservation equation, where J nu is just the nether current that is associated with the sheet symmetry. Okay, and this gives a new type of primary hair in this theory. If we use the Stokes theorem, this is the definition of the nether charge of this theory. So, if Jp, which is the T component of the current, is non-vanishing, there is a possibility of constructing a compact object that has a primary charge. Let me give you some definitions here. Primary hair or charge is a new conserved quantity, okay? And secondary hair is a conserved quantity that is a function of the other charges of the theory. For example, if we have spherical symmetry, a secondary charge would be a function of the mass. Now, our action, as I told you, depends only on the derivatives of the scalar field, the kinetic term and derivatives. So spherical symmetry demands that these derivatives should depend only on the radial coordinate, and this means that we have two options for the scalar field. The scalar field might be a function of the radial coordinate. This leads to solutions that have a secondary hair, or the scalar field might contain a linear in time term. Although the scalar field has a linear in time term, the derivatives depend only on the radial coordinate, so we still have a spherical symmetry. If we have a theory with a Qt term, where Q is an integration constant, we might have solutions that are stealth with a secondary hair, or solutions that have primary hair. Okay, let me give you some extra definitions. A stealth solution is a solution that has a non-trivial scalar field, but the metric is a GR type of metric. Okay, and of course, a primary hair solution has both non-trivial scalar field and metric. Let me give you an example. This is the theory in which we were discussing earlier. In this theory, which is a Hortensky theory, okay, which is described by these two Hortensky functions, if one uses a scalar field with a Qt term, this is the solution for the metric. Okay, and this is a GR solution. This is just as much in the de Sitter or de Sitter space-time, of course, with an effective cosmological constant, but still a GR solution. Okay, but the scalar field is not trivial. That's why we call them stealth. The space-time at the background level do not seize the scalar field. Okay. And of course, the hairs of secondary type, since Q is not free here. In order to construct primary hair theory, primary hair black holes, we impose an extra symmetry to simplify our Lagrangian. So we use shift or shift and parity symmetry, okay, or Z2 symmetry. This means that these three terms in the Hortensky theory are vanishing. So this is the most general shift and parity symmetry theory. In this theory, we use this metric and the scalar field with a Qt term. And after lots of algebra, these are the differential system we have to solve. Okay, and now we try to find, to extract all the information we might get from these three equations and find the integrability conditions. Okay. Here, for simplicity, we use this auxiliary function, the function z. Instead of the f4 coupling function, we just use function z using this equation. Now, from the first equation, we observe that the auxiliary function z determines whether we have a solution that is homogeneous or non-homogeneous. Okay. If z is equal to gamma, then we have that f is equal to h, and our solution is a solution that is homogeneous. If z is non-trivial, the solution is non-homogeneous. Okay. The second equation is just an algebraic equation for x. Okay. If we know the form of z, g4, and g2, okay, we can solve this equation to find x as a function of r. And finally, the last equation is a differential equation if we know the theory, g2, g4, and z. And of course, x as a function of r, we can solve this differential equation to find the metric function h. Now, to solve this system, we choose z equal to gamma. Yeah.
Define what we mean by homogeneous solution.
It's just a terminology for black holes. Homogeneous means that we have something that looks like the Schwarz in the black hole. Okay. Not a homogeneous. We do not use the term like in cosmology. Okay. Homogeneous just means that these two functions are the same, like in the Schwarz black hole. Okay.
Yeah.
And non-homogeneous means that these two things are different. It's just a black hole terminology. A stupid terminology because in the cosmology we mean something else by saying homogeneous, but it is like this in the literature. We just call it the stupid literature. Okay? Okay, let's continue. So we choose z equal to gamma. We have something that looks like a Schwarzschild in the sense that f is equal to h. And then, if we choose these two forms for g2 and g4, and although we still have the general form for the function s, okay, we introduce a new function, and we write g2 and g4 in terms of this function. Although we have not specified the form of this function, we can solve this equation here and find this solution for x. So we have a family of theories.
These are answers for solutions, so not a general form.
The theory of the solution.
You choose this to be an answer for the solution, not
Yeah.
a general form, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. So this family of theories, or this family of theories, this is the solution for x, not a metric, just a scalar field, let's say. Now, in order to integrate the last equation, we have to choose a form for this thing. Okay? And since it is a coupling function, it needs to be an analytic function. And in order to further generalize our framework, we choose this form here, this infinite sum. We choose this infinite sum because here S controls the step of the summation. If S is 1, S is 1. Okay. This thing here can be understood as the expansion of some analytic function. It's just like a Taylor expansion. Okay. You have a function, you take a Taylor, it will have this form if S is equal to 1. Okay. But if S is not equal to 1, this thing is still an analytic function itself, okay, provided that x is positive. So we have all possible cases encoded here in this infinite sum. Okay? Although we use an infinite sum for the cutting function for our theory, we are considering all the possible terms you can have here. Although we have not specified the theory, we can integrate the last equation. This is the pretty thing. We can integrate this thing and have this solution. So we have an infinite family of theories. Here we can keep a few terms if you want, or only one term in the summation.
Those returns, because you have a Gaussian function there, those returns are defined by, the termination order is defined by making the Gaussian function orthogonal polynomial.
Yeah.
Okay. I see what you do.
Well, so we have an infinite families of theories and of course the corresponding solution. And here you can consider special cases, okay?
Yes.
And examine each one of them. Here, capital C is just an integration constant, okay? And if we take the expansion at infinity, we observe that this thing, the coefficient in front of 1 over r, is just the ABM mass of the solution. So we can identify the form of the integration constant in terms of the Q and the mass. Okay. The second term determines whether our solution is flat or asymptotically de Sitter. Okay. If we choose these values here, we can kill this term and our solutions are flat. And finally, the last term contains higher order terms that goes like 1 over r squared plus 1 over r to the 3 power, etc., except of one special case. If n over s is equal to 1, then we have 1 over r squared, and we have r squared here, so this is a O1 term. So in this case, if n over s is equal to 1, at infinity we have 1 plus something. This produces a solid deficit angle, okay, and it's something that looks like a monopole. We'll show you an example later about this.
It's a theory of defects.
Yeah, provided that you keep the step. Okay, provided that you keep the step. If you start the summation from n over s greater than 1, you do not have this problem. Also note here that due to this gamma function, n over s has to be greater than 3 over 2 in order to have a well-defined ABM mass.
I most likely can see it with the previous equation where the Gaussian function is here, the Gaussian function.
Yeah.
Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Okay. This Gaussian function here, it has conditions to be analytic.
There are conditions. We have
I put them like
it's all the same.
Yeah.
And
all those
it is.
But these are all very good for this function is that these are very well known, sufficient and necessary.
Yes.
If this was point function, you would lose.
Yeah. And we have examined this thing and there's no problem.
Perfect.
Okay?
Yes.
Let me go back. So don't worry about the hypergeometric function. Let's go to the other asymptotic region. Okay. If we take the expansion now at the origin, r goes to 0, we have something extremely interesting. Note that we have a C over R plus terms that go as r squared, r to the fourth, etc., etc. So if C is non-vanishing, we have a black hole that has an initial singularity. But the interesting thing is that if we set C equal to 0, we can kill the singularity. Because now the space-time at the origin has this form. Is 1 plus a constant to r squared, we have a de Sitter hole. So we have a regular black hole or a regular object. But if we set C equal to 0, in order to kill the singularity, this relation here says that tell us that Q is related with the mass. So, and if we reverse, Q is a function of mass. So, if we kill the singularity, in order to have a regular object, we lose the primal hair. Since we have Q is now a function of mass, so if you have a regular object, the hair is of secondary type. Okay, so we have two different classes of solutions. We have solutions that have singularity and primal hair. Okay, and also we have solutions that are regular at the origin, regular black holes or solitons. I will show you examples later. But in this case, the hair is of secondary type. Another interesting property for these solutions is that they respect the energy conditions. And this is a strange property because we know from that in order to evade the no-scalar-hair theorem and construct hair solutions, we have to violate the energy conditions. Okay, and the explanation behind this strange result is that the effective energy moment tensor respects this equality, and this inequality is a sufficient condition to bypass the no-hair theorem without violating the energy condition. This is something that was found recently by my friends from the National Technical University of Athens. And it was something funny, because they published this paper, and the next question was, can we find black hole solutions? And independently, we were working in this project, and we had the answer just a few months later. Now, I told you that our solutions have primal hair. They are parameterized by this integration constant. Okay, Q is an integration constant, but is this thing indeed something that is conserved? Here we calculate the netted charge, and we observe that indeed the netted charge, which is a conserved quantity, is given in terms of Q, the integration constant. Okay, and note that as in the case of the mass, in order to have a well-defined netted charge, n of the rest has to be greater than 3 over 2. Okay, this is the same condition. Another interesting property is this one, the Schwarzschild limit of our solutions. As you know, usually in scalar tensor theories, hair solutions do not have a smooth Schwarzschild limit. And let me illustrate it with an example here. We have this theory which is Billon-Hordensky theory, but in this time we do not have a Q-term. The scalar field is purely radial. Okay, and for this theory, this is the solution. Note here that in order to recover the Schwarzschild black hole, we have to set the coupling function, coupling constant, A to 0. We have to kill some terms in the Lagrangian in order to have the Schwarzschild black hole. Also, if we set the mass equal to 0 and kill this term, we do not recover the Minkowski space-time as a vacuum solution, because we have this contribution here from this term in the Lagrangian. In the primary here case, okay, for these solutions, okay, if we set Q equal to 0, which is a free parameter, okay, it's not a Capron constant. If we set Q equal to 0, we get the space-time just the Schwarzschild space-time. We can continuously go back to Schwarzschild. And then, if we set both Q and me to 0, we get the Minkowski space-time. We have a proper vacuum. Okay? Which is a very good, very nice property. Now let me show you some specific examples, okay? Because the general solution is a monstrosity. This hypergeometric function for these cases takes analytic force. Okay? If we take n over s equal to 1 and all the other terms in the summation are 0, okay, we get this solution, which solution, as I told you, has a density. Okay? This is the expansion at infinity, so we have 1 plus a constant. This is the solution for n over s equal to 2. And another solution is this one, where we have used n over s equal to 5 over 2. This is the most simple solution we might have. Okay? And this solution has a very, very interesting property. Because if we make this solution regular, it takes exactly the form of the Bardeen black hole. I will discuss this later, but before I do this, let me show you some plots. These are plots for this solution here. Okay. In this plot, we have solutions that have primary here, because they have a singularity. Okay. They are asymptotically flat. They might have 1 or 2 horizons. And like in the Reissner-Nordström case, there is a maximum value for the scalar charge where we cannot anymore have a horizon. And then, if we exceed this value, we have a naked singularities. Okay, this is pretty similar with the Reissner-Nordström case and nothing special. Here, we have imposed the regularity condition. So these are regular solutions with secondary here. Okay. The solutions are regular. As regular solutions, they are always having 2 horizons. Okay, because we have a secret core. And again, if we exceed the value for the mass, there is only one parameter here, the mass. Okay. The 2 horizons, as we play with as we vary the mass, the 2 horizons come closer. We have at some time an extremal black hole, and if we exceed this value, we do not have anymore an naked singularity because we still have regularity at the origin. So these are solitons. These are particle-like solutions. Okay, or star-like. They have different names in the literature. These are objects horizonless, asymptotically flat, and regular at the origin. So we might have a primary black holes with initial singularity. We might have regular black holes, okay, and we also might have solitons, 3 different kind of compact offsets. Let me turn now to the Bardeen case, because this thing is interesting, and why it is interesting. The Bardeen solution, okay, here, if we use as I told you, the regularity condition, this solution takes this form. Okay, this is exactly the form of the Barnett black hole. If you know about the regular black holes, the Barnett solution was was proposed by Barnett as a geometry, without a theory, as a regular geometry. Later, it was embedded in a non-linear electrodynamic theory. So they found in this work that we can embed the Barnett black hole as a solution of this theory, but we have a problem here. We have a problem because the mass of the solution appear as a coupling constant. And this is a problem because for a theory, the coupling constant has a particular value. It's not a free parameter. Okay, so in this theory, the Barnett black hole is an eternal black hole. It is an eternal black hole in the sense that the mass of the black hole can have only one value. So there is only one black hole in this theories. In our case, and in this theory, the mass is a free parameter. So this theory is a better theory. It's an excellent theory compared with this one to examine not only the Barnett solution, but an infinity of regular black holes. Do you have time? Okay. Let me tell you a few things about the thermodynamics. There is an algorithm to extract the thermodynamics of the black hole. Okay. You can use the Wald formalism or the Euclidean action algorithm. Okay. Actually, for our theories, the Euclidean action formalism is better. And the algorithm is that you have to write down the metric using Nebbian decomposition, perform a weak rotation, impose periodicity of time, write down the Euclidean action as in terms of the Hamiltonian constraint, and on cell the Hamiltonian constraint is 0, so the value of the Euclidean action is equal with the boundary terms. You have to include some boundary terms in order to have a well-defined variational problem, etc., etc. And since this thing is related with the free energy of the system, you can extract the thermodynamics. Okay?
Traditionally,
Yeah.
with all these variations, very clear.
So if we try to perform, to follow the algorithm, we have some problems. We have some problems because we have a Q term in the Lagrangian, in the scalar field. So, one problem. Q appears in the Lagrangian. Q is part of the solution, it's not a coupling constant. It cannot appear in the Lagrangian. Okay. Second problem. The 1 over L term here. This term is problematic since we cannot write the action in terms of the Hamiltonian. We have a QT, so this means that we have conjugate momentum. The conjugate momentum is given in terms of the T component of the current. This is a huge expression. We cannot reverse it. We cannot write down the Hamiltonian using a Hamiltonian formalism. In order to solve this problem, we follow this recipe. We promote the Qt part of the solution into an effective degree of freedom. So we write the scalar field in this term, this as such, and we impose this constraint here because x is not free. Okay, x has to be equal to Qt. But now we can write the Lagrangian in this form. There is no Q here. And also, this is the form of the conjugate momentum. It's simpler instead of using the JT component of the current. And now we can follow the Hamiltonian formalism, and indeed we can write the action, the Euclidean action, in terms of the Hamiltonian. This is Hamiltonian. Okay. And now we just have to follow all the other steps of the algorithm. It's a straightforward procedure from now on. Okay. And as we expect, since we have a primer here, okay, we have this term in the first law of thermodynamics. Okay. We have the chemical potential plus the variation of Q. The entropy is the same with GR, area over 4. This is the temperature, is modified, and this is the form of the chemical potential. To sum up, we have demonstrated the generic method for the construction of compact objects, black holes, regular black holes, and solitons, okay, with primary scalar here or secondary here in parity symmetric Billon-Hordensky theories. We have identified the scalar charge that is accompanying the solution as the nether charge of the theory. The solutions have a healthy behavior. They have a smooth limit to Schwarzschild black hole. This is important because we have compatibility with general relativity phenomenology without the need to impose a screening mechanism. We just simply set Q equal to 0. We have in positive vacuum. The solutions respect the energy conditions. Okay. Also, as I told you, the Billon-Hordensky gravity constitutes a more natural framework to describe the balloon solution, and an infinity of many other regular black holes. And finally, we have the right thermodynamics of the primary solutions. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.